There's another one.
Runaway crabs!
Yep. Got it.
That guy's out of here.
These are the shrimp right here. Oh, look. Not look.
Look at that.
Check the ones out that ice just behind you.
The bottom here. Oh, you doing mushroom thing?
Yeah.
What is that?
It's swahi. Right? It's this new fish we catching in the bayou here. Yeah. Yeah, you can't eat all the big ones. You can only eat the small ones. The big ones are for sale.
That was the cost.
Yeah.
All right, nice one. Gotcha.
Right there, Mike and Merrick's great.
What are these guys doing?
They just laying on the top.
Are you videoing it?
Oh, I'm videoing.
This is all I hate.
I'm doing crawfish.
I remember one time, and I got pictures of that. We threw the cowboy 2 lobsters. We threw 2 lobsters in the boil, and Cookie's holding it up and saying, "Look at the size of this crawfish."
Before the camp, did you do boils at your house or something?
Oh, well, we sold crawfish. We sold crawfish and crabs whenever we see it. We'd catch the crawfish and crabs, and then we'd make a boil. At ballrooms, we used to sell them at. And Sally and Cookie would go back there and pick out all the big ones. Say, look, you can have the crawfish. Don't pick the big ones. That's what you put. You got 3 or 4 big ones in the bag. It sells the bag. You know?
So that was his biggest pet peeve, huh?
Oh man. Well, he wouldn't say that. I would be the one complaining. He didn't care.
Over the years, there have been many family gatherings at the Werner camp, which have grown into a tradition of sorts. Some of us might wonder when all this began. And looking back over time for the Werner family, it most likely started with this man, William Werner, father of Lawrence J. Werner Sr., grandfather of Larry Werner Jr., and great-grandfather of Larry, Craig, and Kyle Werner, and great-great-grandfather of L.J. and Logan Werner. As a young man, he enjoyed fishing, crabbing and shrimping, some of it done along the south shore of Lake Ponchartrain, which in his youth looked nothing like it does today. Larry Werner Jr. remembers stories of his grandfather, William Werner, traveling to the lakefront by trolley, perhaps in the 1920s or earlier, to fish the lake. This was before Lake Ponchartrain had a seawall. He would return by trolley at the end of the day carrying his catch in a basket or a sack. Although there were many fishing camps along the south shore of Lake Ponchartrain, like the one owned by the Waddenfuel family, William Werner did not own one. The Waddenfuels owned their camp outright, but they only leased a spot on the lake from the city. Here we see Ursula Dacan, her sister Melba, and little brother Billy on the porch of the Waddenfuel camp, along with their mother Ethel Waddenfuel, seen here at the top left of this photo. This photo would have been taken around the mid-1920s. Because of development along the lakefront around the mid-20s, this camp was eventually moved to land on Hain Boulevard. For many who grew up in New Orleans at and before the turn of the 20th century, family gatherings at a fishing camp to escape the heat and hustle-bustle of the city during the summer became a way of life. Fishing camps could even be rented for a weekend, and there was plenty of entertainment at Muhlenberg, as well as the old Spanish Fort and West End once the new Basin Canal was completed. Eventually, the arrival of the automobile even made it possible for weekend getaways to faraway places like Bay St. Louis, Long Beach, Waveland, Gulfport, and Biloxi, where two of Lawrence's sisters lived, one in Biloxi and one in Long Beach. For some, it has become a part of family culture, and in many cases, this tradition has been passed down to younger family members who have improved or embellished camp life to the point where some early rudimentary camps have been turned into permanent homes. Family gatherings at these camps have become a way of life for adults and kids, creating a tradition of fishing, shrimping, catching crabs, seafood boils, water fun, and, well, just enjoying life away from the city. The camping culture didn't just spring up overnight. Like most traditions, there was a beginning. New Orleans was founded by the French in 1719. From 1763 to 1803, the Spanish took control of New Orleans. During this time, there were two major fires which nearly destroyed all of New Orleans. Fortunately, the Spanish decided to rebuild the city using brick instead of wood. They didn't have to look far to find the brick, since a Scottish immigrant named Alexander Milne had moved to the city around 1776 and built a brick factory. The rebuilding of the city was a huge success, and by some accounts, the Spanish granted Milne a large tract of land along the south shore of Lake Ponchartrain. Other accounts say he purchased the land for a good price, as it was all swampland, which the Spanish felt was of little use. By the early 1800s, Milne began developing an area along the lakeshore where the old Ponchartrain Beach amusement park would be built in the late 20s and early 30s and remain until September of 1983. The area which Milne developed was called, you guessed it, Muhlenberg. It was also known as Port Ponchartrain back in the early 1800s. Muhlenberg included a port for docking ships, hotels, dance halls, and restaurants. Muhlenberg became a big attraction for people in New Orleans who traveled there through the marshland between the city and the lakefront, probably by a horse and buggy. Of course, some fishing camps had sprung up along the lake even before the full development of Muhlenberg, but now the area was made even more accessible for recreation along Lake Ponchartrain, and fishing camps sprang up in abundance over the years, especially along the area from Old Ponchartrain Beach, then to Hayne Boulevard and to Little Woods. On April 23, 1831, the Ponchartrain Railroad built a 5-mile track to Muhlenberg, but the cars were initially pulled by horses or mules. The track ran down the middle of Elysian Fields Avenue from the riverfront to the lakefront town of Muhlenberg. Around 1831, steam power came along and eventually took over the jobs of horse-drawn cars, the most famous train being the so-called Smoky Mary, named for the smoke which billowed from the engine, making many passengers a sooty mess by the time they got to the lakefront. The Smoky Mary was a train well known by both Mr. and Mrs. Werner, Lawrence and Ducky, during their younger years. In fact, Mrs. Werner, who some called Ducky because of her maiden name Dockan, and others called Seppi because she was born in September, often spoke of riding the Smoky Mary as a child and related just how noisy and smoky it really was. By 1940, the population of New Orleans was over 100,000, and the city was said to be the third largest in the U.S. and one of the richest cities in the nation. With so much wealth during this period, the lakefront continued to grow and prosper. However, by 1932, the train stopped running, partly because more people had automobiles, as well as the development of Lakeshore Drive and a seawall along the lakefront, plus the construction of a lakefront airport. What used to be Muhlenberg eventually became the Ponchartrain Beach Amusement Park and the surrounding reclaimed land for the Lake Terrace, Lake Oaks neighborhood. Because of these developments and construction of the lakefront airport, Many fishing camps along the lake were demolished, and some were moved along the Hain Boulevard area and further to Little Woods. Since then, most of those camps have disappeared due to the storms. Here you can see remnants of the old Waddenfield camp sitting on Hain Boulevard in the early 2000s. Sally took this photo with an old flip phone. As the development of the South Shore continued and prices for property began to rise along the lake, people eventually discovered that the North Shore of Lake Ponchartrain offered a similar experience at a more affordable price. And the 5-mile-long Highway 11 bridge, built in 1928, gave New Orleanians quick and easy access to the North Shore of the lake, where fishing camps began to sprout up as they had in the South Shore in the 1800s. In the early 1960s, Lawrence Werner Sr. and his son Larry purchased some waterfront property on Carr Drive in Slidell, Louisiana, on the North Shore of Lake Ponchartrain for about $2,400, paying $1,200 each. They were familiar with this area as Lawrence Werner Sr.'s brother William Werner had a fishing camp not far away on Rat's Nest Road, which was reached by exiting to the right off of Highway 11 bridge coming from New Orleans. The Werner families had many enjoyable moments making memories at Williams Camp, and probably influenced Lawrence and Larry's decision to build their own camp on Carr Drive, which is reached by turning left after exiting the Highway 11 bridge. After several years of hard work, along with some time for fishing and maybe consuming a few beers, a well-constructed modern fishing camp came to life. The camp sits on pilings approximately 14 feet above ground level. The back of the camp faces a canal with an outlet to the lake, while the front of the camp faces Carr Drive and another canal along the wide spans of scenic marshland filled with wildlife, including just a few alligators. Over the years, improvements and upgrades on the camp have turned it into a very comfortable home. But a camp is a camp and a home is a home, and what makes it special are the people who occupy it. Mr. Lawrence Werner Sr. was well known for his skill and love of fishing, but also for his skill at cooking, and even more for his selfless sharing of what he created with family and friends. He obviously had a very positive influence on his son Larry and daughter Sally, and following generations as his grandsons and great-grandsons seemed to uphold his love of the outdoors and sharing their culinary skills on the plates of family and friends. Looking south from the North Shore, you can make out the city of New Orleans just across the water. Back in the day of horse and wagon, people in New Orleans were lured to the lake for something they couldn't find in the city. In a similar way, Mr. Werner turned to the North Shore to fill a desire he couldn't find in the city. In so doing, he also passed on a family legacy which continues to this day, bringing love and joy with each casting of the net, each catch.
Man, look at that. Look at the size of that shiner, huh?
Yeah.
Every meal prepared and eaten, and every story told, making memories and traditions to pass along to generations that follow. The Ponchartrain Railroad carried New Orleanians to a place of rest, relaxation, and entertainment for nearly 100 years. What Lawrence Werner Sr. and his son Larry started has provided family and friends many a great seafood boil and memorable experiences for many lifetimes, which are being passed down to new generations. The catch, the cooking, the stories, the conversations, and the laughter have made the years a fuller experience for the older generations. Watching the younger ones enjoy the fruits of love and labor of those who came before lets one know this is special, something worth keeping alive. Speaking of special, it needs to be said that not only the men but the women as well have played an important role in keeping the camp tradition alive. For the Werner family, that would be Delisle, better known as Cookie Werner. While the guys catch the fish and take care of maintenance around the realm below, Miss Cookie has turned the camp into a real home through the special touch only she could administer to all things happening above the deck. In recent years, Craig and Cheryl have taken charge at the Werner camp, keeping tradition alive, catching seafood, and hosting family gatherings where everyone lends a hand. Through the children, the grandchildren, and the great-grandchildren, this is what they call tradition. A tradition with heart and soul. Bye.